Roger, thanks for dropping by. Oh, I thought I was going to get some help then. No, we're just going to rip the scratching post to pieces. Well, it's better than the shed door, that's where he normally does it. I've just reminded myself why I don't go on the Facebook groups very often. My world is the YouTube world. I feel more comfortable in it. And why make yourself feel uncomfortable? What sparked this relatively short video is what turned into a massive discussion on fertilizers, mainly the nitrogen element. And I read through it all, because it's early in the day. I got up early because that thing that I've just pointed the camera at actually woke me up this morning yowling because he was hungry. Well, if I'm hungry, I do something about it. That's what he does. Anyway, bottom line, just ask yourselves some questions. Are your orchids doing okay? Well, then stop worrying. Are they just okay? Well, maybe there's a few things you can think about changing. Are they not doing so good? Well, then you need to worry a bit and have a think. But I bet you anything you like, the thing you need to think about most will not be what you're feeding them on. It'll be one or many or all of the other factors. Bottom line with growing orchids is most of us that have got collections have many different types. Any work that's been done on fertilizers will not have been done on all those types. Guaranteed. I know a guy who did it for real. He's not a scientist, he's not a chemist. And those two, those types of people have deep, in-depth knowledge of these subjects and are so willing to jump in and contribute. And by doing so, I believe all that happens is the subject gets too complicated and people either glaze over or become paranoid. And get all worried and, oh, my orchids are all going to die. No, they're not. They're not going to die because of what you're feeding them on, unless you really are being silly. It's one of the least important variables. It's just, is your light right? Because if that isn't right for the type of orchids you're growing, you're going to do more harm than not feeding them enough. Or perhaps feeding them a bit too much even. Providing you're in a sensible range, it's not going to be the food. Light is important. The length of time your orchids get it, the quality of that light, the intensity of that light, that can do a damn sight more harm to your plants than what you're feeding them on, basically. And then there's humidity. I've got plants in here that in their natural environment, they're growing at 90% plus humidity. Well, I can't provide that. I get close. Sometimes I go over the top, and everything's dripping wet because one of my little gadgets has been set wrong, which is I've just come down now to, I walked in here and couldn't see across the room. I'd been fiddling with the hydrostat and got it wrong. And basically, once the temperature dropped yesterday evening, the foggers came on. And it was like the proverbial rainforest in here this morning. The humidity was far too high, a mistake on my part. Okay, so we've done light. Some plants need a lot more than others. Think about your type of plant. Think about getting them in the best place you can as regards light. Too much, you'll burn the flipping leaves. Not enough, you'll get deep green leaves, and your plant may even grow quite well under those conditions, but it may not bloom. So that get light out of the way. Humidity. Orchids, in the main, grow in quite high humid areas. There's a lot of our orchids come from montane forests. They're always constantly moist. So humidity is quite important. Low levels of humidity and your plants will lose moisture out through their leaves at a rate that they can't replace through their roots and the normal processes. So they dehydrate. It doesn't do them much good. And air quality and air circulation. If you live in a small flat and you're a smoker and you smoke indoors, your air quality is going to be poor, and it's not going to do your plants any good. So I'm not recommending that. I mean, I smoke a bit, which is disgusting, I know, and I do it outside. Don't ever do it indoors. Confined space, it's all down to that. Your air quality and air circulation, again, quite important. It helps your plant regulate temperatures. So when your temperatures get up, if the air's moving around, it helps keep the leaves cooler. It will do them the world of good. And then you've got what you grow them in, your media. There's good, there's bad, then there's inorganic, which I class as indifferent, because if it's inorganic and doesn't create any toxins by watering it, then it's inert. So it can't be doing any harm, can it? Yeah. Whereas organic medias, in their original state, when they're nice and clean and new, it's pretty good stuff. It's nature's way, shall we say. But, after time, things start to break down. Your media can become acidic, and that will not do your plants any good. So, there's that. Then there's temperature ranges. It's not just the temperature during the day, it's also the nighttime temperatures. And the difference between the two is a lot more important than people think. It's often the trigger for blooms. It's the difference between the day and the night temperatures. It's got a name which I can never remember, something like diurnal range or something like that. I've probably said that wrong. But it's basically the difference between your night and your day temperatures. And there should be one. Growing in the home where you feel comfortable all day and all night, constant temperatures, that will often be why plants don't bloom as well as perhaps you think they ought to. It's because they don't get that drop at night. So, get your light right, get your humidity right, get your temperatures right, day and night. Get your air circulation going. And if you've got all these things, the chances are what you feed your plants on doesn't make a lot of difference, quite honestly. I mean, there's some plants are classed as high feeders. Well, do they get that in the wild? Do they hell? Epiphytes never get high levels of food. The only tests, I believe, are a guy I know, one of the better growers that I know, with a huge collection and vast and varied orchids of all different types. He's been there. He's been out in those rainforests, with his overcoat on and his welly boots and everything like that in the pouring rain, and he stood under wild orchids with test tubes catching the runoff directly off of those plants. That's what the plant got. Yeah, in the real world. No science, no nothing like that. And then he took away that water in his test tubes and tested what it was. And the most obvious thing was that the rainwater in those type of areas was pretty damn pure. That's not like the rainwater you get in cities and populated areas and areas where there's industry, loads of cars and traffic messing up the air. And it messes the rain up too. Gets on all the surfaces that rain washes down into your water butts and things. And the chances are it's not as pure as you think it is. And, the tap water, the well water, all these different types of waters, have an effect. They also have an effect on the type of feed you're going to use as well. So, a reasonable quality water as a start point is not a daft idea. It's what the plants would get in the natural world. And then right at the end of all that big long list of things to try and get as best you can, and we'll never get it perfect, we've taken these plants away from their natural environment and we're trying to grow them artificially. Now, I know with the hybrids they don't exist in the wild, but their parents did. They have an element of wild about them. It's in their makeup. So then we get right down to what to me is the least important of all of those is the fertilizer. Now, some say that urea-based fertilizers need bacterial elements in the media or soil, Yeah, we don't tend to grow our epiphytes in soil, do we? So you can throw that straight out the window. We don't grow them in soil. So most of those processes are probably not going to take place. And even if they do, they will be at a much slower rate. Yeah? So that's number one. Now, lots of places will tell you that urea-based nitrogen is not very good for orchids because it needs other processes to make it work, to allow the plant to be able to use it. And if you want to get into all this, all you need is a basic understanding of the nitrogen cycle. And if you ask fishy people, that keep fish in tanks or ponds or things like that, they'll know about this because it's quite important. You poke food in one end of your fishies, and muck comes out the other end. That's a natural process. And the muck that comes out the other end is at the ammonia end of nitrogen. And in higher levels, it's toxic. It'll kill your fishies. So people get to know this. And one of the easy ways to get rid of those toxins is to have live plants. Why does that help? Because the live plants use it up to grow. So when you think about the different types of nitrogen, think about that basic nitrogen cycle. And different fertilizers jump in on that cycle at different places. They don't all start at the beginning and go to the end, because there is no beginning and there is no end. That's why it's called the nitrogen cycle. It goes round in circles. It's a natural process. Fertilizers just jump in somewhere along that process, And the bottom line is that guy with his test tubes not only found that the water out in those areas was incredibly pure, but the next thing he found out was the levels of available nutrition in that water was incredibly low. And were all those orchids dying? Were they hell? They were doing quite well, thank you very much. So don't panic, don't worry. Bottom line, if your orchids are doing pretty good, well, carry on. Don't worry. If they're not doing so good, have a little worry and have a think about all the variables that that are available to your orchids. And I can virtually guarantee, with my years of experience and experience of other good growers and everything like that, if your orchid's not doing very well, it's going to be one or several or even all of those other factors. It'll be light. It'll be temperature. It'll be temperature range. It'll be humidity levels. It'll be air quality and air circulation. It'll be water quality. It'll be somewhere in that range of variables. It's highly unlikely to be your fertilizer unless you're not giving them any at all in an inert media. No plants can live on nothing. I know they photosynthesize, but that only provides the basic sugars. Doesn't provide all those macro elements. It doesn't give them the calcium and the magnesium and stuff like that, plus all those funny little things that I can't even pronounce. So don't go into panic mode. You don't need to be a scientist or a chemist to understand that a store-bought fertilizer, whether it says it's for orchids or not, somebody else has done all that work for you. All you need to do is apply it at an appropriate rate. And as far as I'm concerned, that rate is quite low. Simple as that. Don't overfeed. You damage your roots. That's not what they're used to. It's not what they're capable of tolerating. They're not geared up to high levels of feed. You do more damage feeding your plants too high than you ever will feeding them too low. Yeah. So let's not all go into panic mode. As I said, in the YouTube world, we see videos. We see what I'm doing now. We see a jungle of green. Now, I'd like to see lots more pretty colours in amongst that jungle of green, but it's not their time. Most of the orchids in this sea of green, they've either already bloomed. I mean, in some cases, they're going to bloom it. That'll be for the first time on that one. But, Not all my plants are happy. Those that aren't, I understand why, and I'm doing something about it. But most of them are doing okay. You know, I've got flowers, you know, I've got blooms as nice as that on the tiniest of little orchids. Not quite sure how I manage that one. More luck than judgment, I presume. You know, little tiny orchids with blooms on. I've even got phalaenopsis coming out in bloom. Now, I don't do that well with those, probably because I ignore them too much. But, you know, I mean, there's dendrobiums in bloom. They're okay. I've even got a psychopsis with a bloom on. That plant's not happy. And I know why. You know, I've got things like this. This is a species Odontoglossum. It's beautiful. And so's the plant. It's nice and green. It's got loads of new growths. I've got Stinky Sherry Baby making the place smell like a chocolate shop. You have to excuse, I'm in the middle of doing the foggers. It's quite early in the day. So just step back. Are your plants doing okay? And if they are, stop worrying. This is an enjoyable hobby. It's for pleasure. And if it's people's comments in places and getting too deep into all the science and the chemistry are worrying you, there's a simple answer to that. Stop reading it. Stop getting involved. Just step back and take a look at your plants. Yeah? And if they really aren't doing too well, have a look at the various factors that plant needs. There's plenty of ways to find out what your plant needs. That shouldn't be too difficult. Well, if you haven't got the internet, it's not so easy, but nowadays most people have. And if you're watching this, you obviously have. But yeah, let's not panic. Let's not get too worried. Let's enjoy our plants. Yeah, that was it. It's just, I get annoyed sometimes with the Facebook groups that, certainly on one of the Facebook groups, there are several people that jump in on virtually every conversation or discussion and get right in at sciencey level, you know, and have they ever put any pictures up of their orchids? It's an open-ended question. I know the answer because I look into it. So there are some that are only too willing to spout off, and they don't even seem to grow any orchids. You know, maybe they just can't be bothered to take a picture and post it. But somebody who's always on the comment section in those groups that doesn't seem to show their growing areas or their wonderful plants, I'd take what they say with a pinch of salt. You know, just look at the goods. Look at the goods. Oh, this Deesa is, I'm just so enjoying that. Let's hope I can keep the flipping thing alive. Right, is my gadget getting better? Yes, I made a mistake yesterday. The little hydrostat, because I shoved everything around, I just dumped the little sensor on that shelf. And that's where my drippy vanders go. And guess what? I think I got a drip in there. Now, water on electricity parts does not go down too well. That's why the foggers came on last night when they shouldn't have done. The sensor was reading wrong. Now, I've sort of dried that off. To dry it off, I just put it on top of the unit. These units run warm. That is gently warm. It's not hot, but it's not cool. So they run warm, which is why I think Archie may have had a problem with his, because it was enclosed in a confined space. These are air-cooled units. That's why they've got these vents all round them. Yeah? It's quite important for some electrical units, you know, that generate heat in their processing. It's quite important for them to have an airflow around them. Sealing them in a box might not be the best idea because you're generating excess heat. And most electrical units, you know, designed for plants and things, have a temperature range in which they operate. Well, if you exceed that, you're going to damage the unit, aren't you? Simple. You know, these don't work at silly low temperatures. You get down near freezing, these things ain't so good. But yeah, that's the mistake I made. So I've dried it off now and I've put it somewhere where it can't get dripped on. And the unit is now reading correctly again. We're back to 70. Now that one says 72. That one says 72. This one says 70 and a half. 70.6. It's still very, very slowly climbing. So I think this has dried out successfully and not been damaged. Otherwise this would have a silly reading. So I think we're getting back to normal. Anyway, I'm going to get on and fill my foggers up because I know how important humidity is. So I always make sure they don't run dry, and I keep an eye on my humidity levels. Not too high, although some plants would love it, but others wouldn't. So I have to balance. Can't be right for every orchid if you've got a varied collection. So you have to go by an average. And that's all I can do. It's like my temperature ranges. Some of the temperatures I've had in here recently, my Masdevallias hate it. You know, my Restrepias hate it. But then some of my other orchids are sitting there with their sunglasses in their sunbeds thinking this is great. So you just have to try and get a balance. But the thing not to do is go into panic mode. You know, when you read something and you think, oh, I'm doing it all wrong. Well, take a step backwards, look at your plants. Your plants will tell you whether you are doing it all wrong or not. So if your plants are okay, you can't be doing it all wrong, can you? It's just common sense. No science, no chemistry, no botany, none of that crap. If your plants are doing okay, they're doing okay, bottom line. Don't worry. Just enjoy your plants. So something I very rarely say that others say, happy growing. And I mean that. Happy growing. Enjoy your plants. Yeah. Enjoy what we grow them for. The diversity of the plants, the shapes, the colours of the blooms, the shapes of the blooms. That's why we grow them. Otherwise we'd be growing pansies or African violets or geraniums or something. We grow these because we like these plants. They interest us. We enjoy their company. So enjoy them. And let's not have panics generated by posts and things that are just too deep and too complicated and not required. They're not necessary. You don't need to be a scientist, a chemist or a botanist to successfully grow orchids. There's only a few basic things you need to know. And quite honestly, the least important is your fertilizer. You know, to me, it's at the bottom of the list. The other things are far more important for the well-being of your plants. Yeah? Right, I'm going to go and get dressed now. This is early in the day. My day consists of having a look at my posts on my videos first and foremost. That's my channel. And then I have a look round some of the Facebook groups, and this morning I wished I hadn't bothered. But I do get nice ideas from some of the people post pictures of their latest blooms, and I think, God, I like that one. I'll make a note. So they do serve some purpose. But a lot of the time it's just looking at sick, unhealthy plants and people asking what to do about them. And half the time you haven't got anywhere near enough information to help them. You know, where they're grown, how they're grown, temperatures, light, humidity. Without all that, you can't really say what's wrong with a plant, apart from the fact that, yep, it's got no roots, it's probably not going to make it, or it might make it if you're lucky, sort of thing. You know, that's the level. But, yeah, let's not panic. Let's just enjoy our plants. Right, that's a one-off. It's not a rant. It's just a chat. It's just to sort of, I don't know, ease the load. People get far too involved. Just enjoy your plants. Keep on top of the things they need. Keep on top of their light levels, their temperature ranges, night and day, the humidity level that you can maintain. You know, all these things. Do those first and foremost. And give them a bit of feed now and again. The type of feed you use is of less importance. Yes, it's important. I'm not writing off the subject, but it's not as important as getting everything else right. You know, get all that right first and your plant's in a good position to be able to accept a bit of feed now and again. You know, and use it and grow and produce blooms. That's what it's all about. We don't grow them for the greenery. Well, I seem to have an excess of it up in that corner. That's why they're there. They're up there because they're not in bloom. I mean, there is actually a nobly with some blooms on at the back there somewhere. I'll hold the camera up in the air, see if I can find it. Yeah, down in there. But those blooms are going over now, that's why I moved it. You know, I keep my stuff in bloom where I can see it near the front. Yeah, that's how I like to grow. And then as the blooms go over, the plants get moved to their perfect plant position in my grow room, the place where I think they're going to do best for me in my grow room. And that's where they live. They only come to the front in the wrong place when they're in bloom. Example, this should not be up here where it's warmer. But I've moved it because I've moved that fogger across. I need that fog up in that corner. So that's why that's been moved over a bit, which means Sherry Baby comes over here. So, yeah. But this is too high up, compensated by the fact it's right in the blast of the fogger. The mist that comes out of the fogger is cool mist. So at the moment, while this is in bloom, which won't be that much longer, is a substitute for being down at floor level where the cool breeze comes in from the inlet fan. So the substitute, temporarily, is the cool mist off the fogger. Yeah, so I adjust every now and again. I think I can plug my foggers back in now. I think my unit has dried out successfully enough, the sensor, for that reading to be as accurate as I need it to be. It says 71 something, and the other two say 72, 73. That's close enough for jazz. Don't need it to be down to 0.1 of a relative humidity measure. Just don't need it that good. Okay, I will see you next time. This is a de-worrying chat. Take the worry away. It's not that difficult. I mean, I'm a relatively simple-minded person. I try and keep things simple. If I can grow the flipping things, okay, I've got a grow room. That does help a bit. But prior to that, I was growing orchids on my windowsills. They didn't do bad, you know. And that was without any air circulation, without any extra humidity, you know. But they're growing better out here than they ever did then. So by changing that thing and actually allowing me to have these gadgets and adjust humidity and all that sort of stuff, they are growing better. So, you know, we do what we can. But most importantly, enjoy your orchids. That's why we grow them. I think this is going to open soon. I haven't got a clue what it's supposed to look like when it opens, but yeah, it's coming on. So that will be, apart from Elizabeth Ann Buckleberry, that will be my first bulbophyllum to have grown a spike and sort of bloomed it. I did get the Elizabeth Ann Buckleberry to bloom. But yeah, so I'd like to see some more of the bulbophyllums bloom because they're new to me. You know, I had to do a bit of work when I first got those. So I didn't know what I was doing. They were new. So you do a bit of work, you know, and then you find out that it's such a vast genus that the work you've done is so infinitely variable. You know, some of them like quite deep shade. Some of them like reasonable light levels. There aren't many that like really bright light. That's not the place where they come from, you know. They all like reasonable humidity. That seems to go across the board. They don't like to stay dry. So they drink a bit. They like to stay moist. That seems to be quite common to most of them. But light levels are variable. Temperature ranges. Some of them are warm to hot growers. Some of them are cool growers. You know, so in amongst the bulbophyllums, there's an awful lot of variables. So I have to average. Because they all get the same. Now, for some of them, it's not good enough. And they may not bloom, but I'll find that out as time goes on. We do what we can. Right, that'll do. I hope that hasn't worried anyone. I mean, the idea was to de-worry people. Don't take too much notice on the Facebook groups. As I say, you've got an awful lot of people spouting off there that don't even seem to grow any orchids. And even though their science or their chemistry may be valid and perfectly true, does it actually require that level to grow your orchids? And the simple answer is no. Of course it doesn't. You don't need all that to be able to grow your orchid successfully. If you want it, and you enjoy reading about that sort of stuff and getting into that deep and meaningful level, then by all means do it. But I don't think it's going to make you grow your orchids any better. These are not that difficult. They really aren't. Right, see you next time. Thanks for dropping by. Now I really must go and get dressed.